obviously we don't know the severity of an injury or anything like that, but just to see a teammate walk off as soon as something happens, just kind of what goes through your head and I guess your mind going forward.
I've been in this league a long time. I've been there, plenty of times, and I think it's just a next man up mentality. That's what it is. You got to cover for one another, and yeah, obviously, give him well wishes and whatnot. Give him, the support he needs. But when you're in between the lines, it has to be a next man up.
It feels like in Indiana, that was something you guys were really good at. If someone went out, just kind of doing that. As a leader, how do you try to help the team understand, like, hey, we can still win games, we can still do what we need to do, even if he's out for a little while?
You got to trust your system. Trust what got you, to the point. Obviously, Jay is a big part of what we do, but there is an offensive system that we put in place to, just help us achieve, our ultimate goal. And I think that again, you got to fall back on your training.
For you guys, Ryan, you guys have asked a lot out of. He's someone that has stepped up in a role. How do you try to help him, even with a larger role, as he's trying to get used to it?
Yeah, I think Ryan's done a phenomenal job, but it has to be all of us. Just me personally, except being a leader on the team, and I have to play better. I put a lot of stuff on myself. No one's more critical of my game than me. There's little things like I don't ever forget plays, and forgot to play down the stretch. That's in the big possession. I missed a low man like twice, and it's just little stuff like that starts to add up and whatnot. This game isn't always about shot making, and for me, I expect more out of myself. So I can't preach to these guys to be sharp beyond it if if I'm not on myself. So I think accountability is a big thing in this league.
I don't always think like you playing good offensively means you score points. But with GA being out, I think you guys are going to need some more points. How do you try to balance that? Like that general idea that it doesn't necessarily have to be points, but the team is going to need some points.
The ball finds energy, you know what I mean? I think that with us, we can't stand still. We have to be a very frenetic team. We have to be a team that has to cut, flare, space, move, whatever, calls for it within the possession. I think that it's very important for us to, just play next action basketball, and that's something that I'm accustomed to in the past, and I'm trying to, make sure that, everybody on this side just, realize it's so important, so the ball doesn't get stagnant or, stand still.
Doc had mentioned, I think this is the end of 6 and 9, if I remember.
A lot of games.
Just how good is it going to be to have a break and then also have a practice on Wednesday that you can start to implement if he is out for an extended period of time?
I think it's huge. I think practice days are important in this league. I think that obviously getting your rest is important, but anytime you come together as a group and just watch film, fix mistakes, or even just being in the same room together, feeling each other's energy. It's important, So I'm looking forward, obviously to a day of rest, but also just just reviewing everything. It's been to this 10. I think it's been 13 games, something like that. To this point, so you kind of just do a little status check and just keep it going from there.